I'm Duncan Stewart. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a Senior Vice President of Business Development at Mission Wired. Pass over to Sydney.
Yeah, nice to see you all here today. My name is Sydney Moyer. I'm a strategist at Foresight Studios. I use she, her pronouns, and really excited to kick things off.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gaby Golub. I use she, her pronouns. I manage digital fundraising at World Wildlife Fund, including multi-channel campaigns, email, SMS appeals, donation form optimization, and I've been at WWF for nearly 14 years.
All right, then we're going to get ourselves kicked off with a quick thought starter in the Whova app. So we'd love to hear one strategy, tactic, something that you are most eager to test. What are you really interested in learning? Maybe it's something you want to, find out about your audience ahead of Giving Tuesday. Maybe you want to learn something about how to present the best match offer. We'd love for folks to take a couple minutes, dive into the app, and then we'll be taking a look there and talking through some of those whenever we get to the discussion portion. I think with that, we can go ahead and jump right in. So we wanted to start just about talking through some tactics that have led to a ton of success for World Wildlife Fund. So, Gaby, what goes into a successful World Wildlife Fund campaign?
At WWF, we hold several fundraising campaigns throughout the year. Some are on the big side, like Giving Tuesday, and some are a bit smaller, like seasonal membership drives. Pretty much all of them have these elements in common. They generally have a donor goal. They have some kind of inspiring deadline that might be tied to an awareness day. They're mostly 100% digital with the occasional postcard. And they all soft launch with some engagement, which is what I'm going to be diving into in a moment. And then they officially launch with fundraising appeals. So I'm sure you all have a million really inspiring fundraising ideas, but today I wanted to talk about some of the innovations I've incorporated to bolster our fundraising success. And I thought it might be interesting to shine a spotlight on some of our fundraising campaign activities that wear a bit of a disguise. Tactics that engage our supporters in various ways, but manage to drive a lot of donations. And I'm sharing these in the hopes that you might steal some of these ideas and put your own spin on them and use them to strengthen your own fundraising results and your supporter engagement. So specifically, tactics like surveys, votes, and quizzes, and just to show you how much these efforts can contribute to our overall results, I included this chart from a 2025 campaign where over 40% of our gifts came from efforts where we didn't reach out and just make the case for a donation, but we kind of took people on a little engagement journey en route to a donation form.
So I know, Gaby, that people love to be asked their opinion about things, right? We love to share how we feel about things. So I would like to ask you your opinion on surveys and how they've worked for you at WWF.
Well, thanks for asking, Sydney. I'm happy to dive into that. I just want to give a tiny bit of background on how we deploy these surveys and how they all come together, and then share why I think they work so well for us and well for you. So typically we send 2 to 3 emails to our supporters and an SMS and ask our supporters to take a survey about some broad topic that we know they care about. Maybe what they love about wildlife or why they care about nature. Through testing, we've also learned that deadlines really motivate people to respond to our surveys quickly. So that allows us to use last chance messaging and really improve our response rate. So we develop a short survey, just about 6 or 7 questions long, and then always end it with a question about their readiness to stand with WWF. People complete the survey, and they land on a donation form with a message of thanks. So circling back to why I think this works so well is, one moment. People love being asked to share their opinions because it makes them feel valued and heard. I don't know if you're like this, but what I've found is people really love sharing their opinions. I mean, we see it with reviews and comments and surveys. And surveys also can connect what people care about with your mission, and reminding them of their values can prime them to support you. And I thought you might just be curious to know generally how well these work for us. So for our very recent campaign that we held in the past few weeks, for the emails that we sent promoting our survey, let me see, how do I phrase this? More than half of the people who clicked through the links in our emails finished the survey. I think that's pretty good when we ask somebody to do something that they take a couple of minutes to then follow through and do it. And for that campaign and for many others, we generally see about 3 to 8% of people finishing the survey and then donating, which is maybe better than what we see from donation appeals. So it's really a great way I've found to raise funds kind of through this circuitous route.
And on a similar topic to people loving to share their opinion, it sounds like you all have used voting as a really great tactic to get folks engaged in giving.
Yeah, for sure. Surveys prompt people to reflect on their values and what they care about. Votes are a bit more visceral. So we've held a few votes for things like choosing an image for computer and mobile wallpaper, or selecting a featured species for our next monthly e-newsletter, or even letting us know what they would choose for the cover of our calendar. So showing people lovely imagery and asking them to participate in a democratic process where their vote counts. And then delivering them to a donation form has similarly proved to be really effective for driving donations.
What a concept.
So I just wanted to share a couple of tips regarding voting in case that piqued your interest and you want to carry out something similar. So we've found really high engagement by having people cast their vote by clicking on a link in the email, not taking them from the email to a landing page, like a survey page, and then asking them to vote. So one tip I have for you, if you're interested in executing this, super basic, name your email links. So for the cub in the upper left, that might be cub, tiger 1, and then the one in the snow, name that accordingly so that in your email report, you can count votes really easily. And we also created a custom URL parameter to show relevant content on the landing page. So in this case, if you clicked on that tiger cub in the email, you would see the tiger cub on the landing page, and that lets people know that their vote has been recorded. And we do that also with a little slightly fancy code on the donation form, and if you're curious about it, I can talk to you afterwards about how to make that work, but it's very simple, and we use it a lot.
I'll just add one thing on this one, and I'm not sure if y'all have done this at WWF, but something that we've seen work for a lot of our partners is then also sending that follow-up email to say, hey, here's what won. I think it's a really nice moment for the folks who voted for it. It shows them that their vote matters, like you said. And it could also be another nice moment to add in another, small fundraising ask while still sharing mostly an engagement message.
Yeah. And you're part of a community that way,
Exactly.
Right? You're one of thousands of people who voted, and here's what the result was. Yeah. So I know another big aspect of online engagement can be a gamification tactic, like a quiz. So curious how you all have used quizzes and whether you've seen success in fundraising there.
Yeah, I've developed a lot of quizzes over the years. I was just looking at them recently, and it's something like 15 to 20 of them that I think are a really fun way to engage our supporters. And I can tell because I know how many people finish them. Our quiz topics have varied from wildlife facts, maybe just an elephant-specific quiz or a quiz about tigers, as well as quizzes that are specific to our work. So we have found that quizzes work really well. So far, we have been taking people from email to a quiz built in our CMS. to an Engaging Networks form, but Foresight has been hard at work building out a quiz interface that we can build through surveys. And I'm really looking forward to using that and keeping people within EN for the whole journey from email to survey quiz to donation form so we can tell who took what. And yeah, I really enjoy this aspect, and I encourage you all to consider this one as well.
Yeah, talk to us about quizzes. If you have something that you're interested in building, we love to think about how we can keep that journey in Engaging Networks and optimize the process all the way through.
And I just meant to note a couple of my thoughts about why I think quizzes work really well. People love testing their knowledge. I don't think that's new to anyone who's heard of BuzzFeed, and having a quick distraction. Your supporters also love learning more about things related to your mission that they're not necessarily going to get from your newsletter or from your website. And quizzes are just a more fun way to take them through that information. And they can also connect what people care about with your mission. And just like the other tactics, they can really prime your supporters to support you on that final donation page.
All right, now this is one of my all-time favorite tactics. I'm really excited to hear about how y'all have used this, but digital member cards. Where have you seen success with those?
Yeah, so we run a few membership drives throughout the year. And this tactic isn't engagement, but really strictly fundraising. And but it kind of relates to the voting tactic as well as some of the implementation of how we make this happen. So not everyone loves the same wildlife. Not everyone would choose an elephant over all other species. So one thing we've been able to do is offer people customized member cards. So we allow people to choose their own design out of 4 that we come up with. They click the link in the email for the member card they want, similar to our voting effort, and then they'll see it on the donation form as you see here. And if they go ahead with their membership gift, we include a personalized downloadable member card in the autoresponder.
And that's just a JPEG download, right? You can, pretty easy to put together, not too heavy of a lift for no development required or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. In case anyone's interested in implementing something like this, I can walk you through super quickly how we do that. We use the same custom URL parameter that I mentioned earlier and some slightly fancy code in the donation form and some filters in the autoresponder to send the right card to each donor. And we do use a third-party personalization tool to put the donor's name on the digital card. And again, if you're curious about any of the details behind that, feel free to connect with me later.
We love a low-cost premium. Fantastic.
So I know the progress bar is an old reliable tactic in fundraising, both in your emails and on your donation forms. Can you talk a little bit about why this tactic works so well, and if you've tested it, what results you've seen?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of the progress bar. It really helps communicate to people that there are other people like them who have gone through with the thing we're asking them to do, and just shows kind of the power of community. You can be part of a group this big doing this thing for an issue you care about. So we've done a bit of testing with progress bars. And so I have 2 illustrations here. The one on the left is one that we tested into for email, where it is a GIF, and we changed the little graphic where right now you see our logo. We might change that to a different wildlife photo or graphic. But it is animated, and it's near the top of the email. And when we have tested it, it did encourage more people to click and convert. We recently tested this progress bar on the right on a donation form, kind of gussied up to look a little more like a thermometer. and it didn't have much of an impact. So I did include this on this slide to encourage you to do your own testing. I'm happy that the built-in progress bar in EN now is accurate, which was kind of an issue for us in the past, but now it's pretty reliable. But this so far hasn't worked for us, and I don't know if it's how it looks or where we've used it, but I would encourage you all to give it a try.
Yeah, you never know what results you're going to get until you test, right? And you never know, maybe a different segment of your list is going to respond to something differently. If you send something to your monthly donors versus someone who's never given before, you might get a different result, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So another tactic that I really like that I think can be a little underutilized. So I am with Foresight, as I mentioned, but before that, I was at a nonprofit called Conservation Law Foundation. Shout out, Chelsea. Nice to see you here. Chelsea's at CLF. We collaborated with our social team to work with influencers. So they were working with outdoors influencers to make content about how, for example, ice climbing was being affected by climate change in New England. So they made this fabulous video, had this reel, it did really well on Instagram. And then we reached out to the influencer to say, hey, can we take this message and write this in an email and send it out in your name? And we waited to send it out during a particularly warm week in February. And we linked to a petition, add your name, and then daisy chain to a donate form. And that actually ended up raising us a lot of money. So I think, reach out to your social team, see what they're working on, and see how you can dovetail, and never underestimate the power of not directly asking for money as a powerful way to raise money.
All right, fantastic. Well, excited to get into some optimizations for pages and forms now. Starting off with personalized ask amounts. This is one of my personal favorites. You should never be asking your entire audience for the same amount. You're not going to get the best results that way. Gaby, can you talk a little bit about how you've used this at WWF?
Yeah, sure. We happen to not use Ian's built-in tool to make this happen, so my example is not 100% relevant to all of you. We actually have personalized ask amounts for each supporter exported from our CRM to EN. That's just our preference for doing that. And I just wanted to show you the little snapshot from my EN record on the right, and that is what gets populated in the ask string, as well as the default, that's that second row for 20. So it's the default amount on the form, and then we can also use that field in emails to send an email that says, please renew your membership for insert supporters default amount here. And we have tested this 2 or 3 times just to feel confident about it, and it worked amazingly well. So I would highly recommend testing, if you're not already doing this, testing personalized or dynamic ask amounts against your fixed ask string, if that's what you're doing now, and you just might see much higher click-through rates and conversion rates and higher revenue.
And I'll just add to both that point and to Sydney's point earlier, this is one that's really important to test for different audience segments that you have. Think about your prospects, really test and figure out what is that best ask amount to get folks converting. And then also test for your other audiences, not just what they've given in the past, but also can you get them to upgrade? This might be different at different moments, but I would say, Giving Tuesday, end of year coming up, it's a really good moment to ask for a little bit more than you have in the past and see if you can get those folks upgrading their giving and not just staying at the same level.
And on that topic, that is actually a really great test to run. If you already have those personalized ask amounts in place, it's really easy to set up a test to just ask for a little bit more. So if your lowest giving handle is $25, maybe bump it up to $30. See what happens. Bump up $50 to $60 and see if there's any drop off in your conversion rate. So you definitely want to monitor that closely. But when I tested this when I was in-house at CLF, I think I saw no drop off in conversion rates and a 35% increase in revenue. So it really cannot hurt to test, and it's really easy to put together once you already have the personalized ask amounts in place.
Those are impressive results, Sydney.
Oh, no. It's not always like that. So another big tactic, which can seem like a small thing, but is actually pivotal in a donor user experience on a donate form, is simplifying that form, shortening the form. I know WWF has done a lot of testing around this, so would love to hear about your experience and what has worked really well.
Yeah, as it happens, these haven't necessarily won, but I still believe in them. So as you know, when you send folks from an email to your donation page, any information you have on file for them will get populated in the form, but there is a pretty handy way that Foresight handled for us of condensing all of those form fields into a really small chunk of contact info instead. And it's very easy if someone forwards an email and it's not you when you reach the donation page or some info is not right, to click on that, change my info, all the fields appear and you can change what you need to, but it makes the form a lot shorter and easy for people to zip through, or they just pick their donation amount and put in their payment info. So I would highly recommend some tactic like this. Feel free to test it or just do it. And the other example on here is one that we have tested, and it hasn't won yet. But this is the entire donation form for people who are on mobile. They land, they see their ask strings, they see the payment type options, and like I said, if they're on mobile, the digital wallets are pre-selected, and these are the only fields we ask them to complete: their first and last name and email address, and then they can just click the button and donate. Like I said, this hasn't won for us yet. I don't know if it's just digital wallet adoption happens to be not that huge for our supporters. But again, this is easy enough to implement, and I would recommend trying it because it makes the process really quick. Something we did test, and it did work well, was super simple. We, through a couple different kinds of tactics, or coding, I should say, we updated our test forms, incorporated the supporter's first name into the headline. Who doesn't respond better when you see your own name, like we know from email? The same thing holds true for donation forms. So we tested this just to make sure it actually made a difference. It did. It wasn't huge, but it helped. So we've rolled this out on a lot of donation forms where we put the supporter's first name in the headline.
I think that's so impactful, especially paired with the renew language. You know, you're saying like, hey, we know you need to renew your membership. We're speaking to you directly. That's such a nice pairing of tactics.
Yeah, thanks.
Love a tactic you can implement in an hour.
So one we've been working on a bit, just trying to fine tune this and get it working as well as possible, is giving people a couple different ways to give annually. This is a growing popular choice for our supporters. And we first tested just a little checkbox at the very bottom of the form that we've highlighted, inspired by HRC's forms. And it did work better. It didn't impact people giving monthly. It just turned those one-time donors into annual donors, and retention is very high for annual donors. We had an annual donor program, if you will, for something like 7 years maybe, and we know that those people do stay on. So a couple of tips I have here is just to change up that language as appropriate for your form. So if you have a form that's for Giving Day or Giving Tuesday, just to note that in the text at the bottom in that annual opt-in. We also tested having a button at the top, and this didn't work that well for us, so we're not going to be proceeding with it, but you might have different results. It could be a layout thing. It could be just how small the buttons were on mobile. But I would also suggest testing this out yourselves.
All right, excited to dive into some specific Engaging Networks features. Gaby, can you tell us more about the specific features y'all are using, some quick things that folks can turn on, hopefully within an hour, like you said, to make a big difference in their campaigns?
Yeah, should we skip this slide since we're at the 5-minute mark? Just to time
Yeah,
check
that's
a little
totally
bit.
fine. I think
Okay.
these are kind of self-explanatory, but again, just find me later if you're curious.
Yeah, talk to Gaby about hidden opt-ins if you're curious. Very powerful tactic, and something you can implement on all your pages.
All right, and we're going to keep moving, I think, through this one. Thank you. I couldn't see the timing, so I appreciate the call out. And I'm going to talk a little bit about testing, which I know we've already referenced a lot today, and how to roll out testing within your organization. And don't worry, I can talk really fast, so I'm going to make this quick. All right, so whenever we think about testing, we usually break this down with our partners into 3 key types. That's experiments, pilots, and optimizations. When we talk about optimizations, that's kind of what we think about as like your classic testing. A lot of the things we've talked about today would fall into optimizations. That's quick tests that you can implement and get a fast learning. It may not apply to your entire program, but you're going to be able to continue to optimize your entire program. So that's going to be things like subject line testing. That's going to be things like testing different styles of graphics, sort of those quick hits that are continually optimizing your program, but not something you might roll out across all messaging. Experiments are going to be those kind of larger tests. Those are going to be things that you're going to want to be testing over time and getting kind of bigger learnings that might change a lot of what you do for your entire email program. So that might be, do we dramatically change our style of graphics? Do we change a lot about what we're putting into our digital membership cards? Are we changing the way that we talk about our work in certain fundraising messages? These are things that you're going to want to spend a fair amount of time on, collect a lot of data on, and also one where I'd really recommend analyzing those results by audience, because you could see really dramatic differences for your prospects, your sustainers, and your mid-level donors. And then finally, pilots. Kind of referenced this one a little bit earlier. We talked about shortening the donation forms. That's something you might think about piloting, where you might not do like a strict A/B test. It might be something that you just roll out in a pilot phase, maybe even with a smaller portion of your audience, and assess if it's going to work for your program. Trying out an SMS program might be one. I would say definitely do this if you haven't already. SMS is fantastic, but you might want to pilot it, set aside a smaller amount of spend, test with a certain part of your audience, and assess, is this going to work for us without doing direct testing?
Yeah, I'm curious, Duncan. So if you're new to testing, if you don't have maybe the infrastructure set up yet on your team, how would you recommend setting up that infrastructure so that you're not remembering to test something once every 6 months when you have time?
That is a really great question. And one thing I would also say is, even if you're remembering to test every 6 months, what is almost more important is what happens after. So a few things I would think about for every test. Number one, what are your KPIs? What's the time frame for this test? It's really easy to put something in place and say, great, we're testing it. What are we actually testing? What's going to tell us if we won? Is it revenue? Is it gifts? Is it engagement? Figure that out and make sure that you're tracking that carefully and pulling those results very quickly. That's that regular reviews piece. It's easy to say, hey, we're going to put this testing program in place, and then 6 months later maybe say, oh, what happened there? Like, did we find out anything? Make sure you're setting that time aside for regular reviews and looking not just at what was the last test that we ran, but how is all of this testing impacting the program? What are we seeing from the 5 different subject line tests that we've ran recently? Is there a bigger learning to pull out of this? Then you also want to make sure that you're prepared to pause and implement. Especially for some of that longer term testing, you might plan to say, hey, we're going to do some string testing over the course of the next 3 months. But after month 1, we have a really clear learning. Great, let's roll it out. Don't be afraid to change up those timelines if you're seeing something clear and you're ready to just launch it. And then finally, iterate. Use that mindset. If you have that clear learning, awesome. What's the next step? What else can we learn? Or maybe this was really clear for 3 of our audiences, but that 4th, we're not super sure. Is there a way that we can change up this test and still get to a good learning, a good result? So a lot of this is about being nimble, being quick to pull those results and to analyze what's our next step going to be and never locking yourself in. Then again, I know we've talked about a lot of, small incremental changes here, but everything's going to add up to really big gains, especially as we get into the heaviest fundraising season of the year. So we're excited for everyone to hopefully be able to implement some of these tests in your next big campaign.
Yeah, and check out the answers that everyone put in the app earlier. Steal some tactics. we're all borrowing from each other. I'm on all y'all's email lists, and I'm getting inspired every day. So check out those ideas and see if there's something you can implement this end of year.
So we'll just be stealing all of your tactics then. Okay.
So we'll sign up for the email list. We'll talk to each other. We'll share some tactics over lunch. How's that sound? So would love to, if we have time for questions, go over that. We also have our contact information up on the board here. I love to talk about donation form optimizations. We're doing free donation form audits if you scan that QR code. Would love to talk to you in a meeting this week or next. Duncan has a QR code up here, and then Gaby has her email here. Reach out to us. Do we have time for questions?
Oh, I think we've got time for one question. I reckon it's the $1 million question too. So a nice easy one. How can we convert activists to donors?
Well, one thought is to make sure you ask them. So in case anyone is not currently doing this, definitely daisy chain your action pages to a donation form. People will be logged in once they land there, once they enter their information on the advocacy page and then move over to the donation form. So I would definitely suggest asking them there.
Yeah, I think that is key. You should always be daisy chaining every single action that you have to eventually end on a donation form. I think also it can be nice to segment your activists and send them their own campaign to say, hey, we recognize how much action you're taking and how engaged you are on this cause, and we want to, recruit you to our cause to deepen your engagement even further. I think calling out that they have this engagement with your organization, that they do care about the mission, like Gaby was saying earlier with the first name personalization, I think that personal touch goes a long way.
And just a small thing on that note too, after that daisy chain, when they land on that donation form, make sure that speaks to the action that they just took. Make sure it's specific, referencing, hey, you just, helped us move this forward. Now we need you to help us take the next step by donating. So make sure that you're continually referencing that back and not landing them somewhere generic that doesn't speak to the action that they just took for you.
Great, thank you guys. I think some really good tips there. So basically target your audience, segment them and ask them. Lovely. Thanks so much to our panel.